Chairman of the Senior Staff Association of the Water River Authority, Cephas Duse, has described Energy Minister Boakye Jaku as incompetent and a man who lacks integrity. According to him, the minister lied to Ghanaians when he said the nation will benefit immensely from the revised Ameri deal. Government has on countless occasions mentioned that the country stands to benefit from the deal, which they say will give the nation over $400 million in savings. But VRA disagrees, indicating Ghana stands to lose over $400 million from the deal. The staff have therefore called on the president to sack the energy minister if he fails to resign.
At a press conference to explain in detail why the revised Ameri deal was a bad one, Senior Staff Association of the Volta River Authority accused the energy minister of presenting wrong figures to Ghanaians. Chairman of the Senior Staff Association, Cephas Duse, specifically mentioned that the minister lied when he said Ghana was to benefit from over $400 million.
Based on the analysis above, the claim by the energy minister that the country will be saving $405 million under the new deal is not tenable. Is it not ironical that in renegotiating a contract, which is supposed to have been overpriced by $150 million, we end up increasing the cost by $727 million dollars? Is this the type of review we were promised? We challenge the energy minister to share his voodoo financial analysis that resulted in the $405 million cost savings with the public, so that we can all interrogate it.
Describing the minister as incompetent, the senior staff of VRA called on him to resign.
We think that this misleading comparison and computation were disingenuously done by the energy minister to deceive Ghanaians. This shows that the honorable minister is incompetent, lacks integrity, or absolutely not on top of his job. We think that by the current deal, the energy minister has exhibited financial recklessness with intent to assist a foreign company milk the state. We therefore call on him to honorably resign immediately and save the government and this nation from further disgrace and embarrassment and time wasting. We plead with the president to sack him if he so honorably fails to resign. Thank you.
They maintain that VRA is efficient and has the mandate to diversify its power generation sources. Nancy Emefa Jadosi for Joy News.
Well, Joy News is learning that there's been some engagements at the presidency involving the energy minister and his deputies, but we're yet to get any firm word on it. When we do, we are going to share that with you. Moving on, workers of the National Identification Authority are threatening to embark on a sit-down strike for non-payment of salaries. The workers say despite persistent appeals to the management to pay their 3-month outstanding salaries, they are yet to make a headway. The workers say they will stop work if they do not receive their salaries by Friday. F1 Evans Chimri reports.
Grieved workers are threatening not to work from Friday, August 10th, 2018, if the National Identification Authority fails to pay their 3-month salary due them. Some of the workers allege they borrow monies to enable them come to work daily.
We at the NIA are very furious as of now. We are agitated, in fact, at Prof's comments to us. How could he say on radio that he has no idea that he has not paid us for 3 months, when he promised he will be paying us every month? For he to sit on radio and tell us that he has no idea and use all sorts of adjectives to describe our action is gross disrespect to us, and we are very furious at him, and we are going to pass through the right channel and strike.
All what we seek now is for them to tell us when are they going to pay us and what are the terms of the payment. That is what we want to know from them. But to talk of like they don't know that we have been paid, they don't know when they are paying us, it is very, very embarrassing. We pick our own money, we come here with our own pocket money. Sometimes we don't even get water to drink, we buy it for ourselves. Some of us are also family members. We have to take care of our family as well. So for them to tell us that he's not aware that we've not been paid is very, very embarrassing.
A little over 3 months now, we've not received our salaries, and they keep on promising. They've taken our bank details over a month now. We've not heard anything from them. We got messages that those who didn't fill in the right details should come back. We went there, still we've not heard anything. And we keep borrowing from our friends to come to job. People know you're working all right and you're not getting your salaries. It's difficult. We have to rely on the benevolence of the institutions we're registering now to give us lunch. And they keep forgetting the otherwise, or the success or otherwise of this program depends solely on the workers here. They're not treating us right. Sometimes we don't know when the monies are going to come.
Meanwhile, Executive Secretary of the National Identification Authority, Professor Ken Atifwa, says the allegations made by the workers are false.
This morning, I spoke with some of the workers here at the NIA who claim they are permanent staff and have not been paid for 3 months. What do you have to say about that? Is it true?
First of all, that cannot be true. There is not a single person at the National Identification Authority who is a permanent staff who has not been paid for 3 months, not for 2 months, not for 1 month. Every single person who is a permanent staff has been fully paid for the last month worked. We are paid directly from the Controller and Accountant General's Department. That person is either out to lunch or not a staff of this authority.
He, however, admitted that some of the workers working on the contract basis had not been paid because of some procedures they had to introduce in the payment system.
The reasons why there have been delays in the processing of the payments due to those who have legitimately signed a contract and have so selflessly served this nation over the last 2 months and a bit more, beginning approximately the 23rd of May. They have worked hard, and a Libra deserves his or her wage, and they will get their wage. The funds availability is not the issue. The issue is that there is a contractual relationship that must first be entered into between NIA and the workers. To this date, only 80% of the 650 or so workers have actually signed and submitted their appointment letters. Some of them are in the field working and yet have not signed the contract, and yet they expect to be paid. That's a non-starter.
We're barely a month to the implementation of the double-track system. Officials of the Ghana Education Service have started meeting school administrators to help them draw a timetable for the smooth implementation of the program and help government reduce pressure on the schools. And Esmenu was at the Best Western Class Hotel in Accra, where teachers from Accra and the eastern regions gathered for the exercise.
About 80 to 100 staff of the Ghana Education Service are gathered here at the Western Premier Hotel to meet with officials of the GES to help them draft their respective timetables for the double-track system that will be rolled out in September this year. Now, the staff include teachers and, most importantly, assistant headmasters in charge of academics, and they are from the Eastern and Greater Accra regions. Now, mind you, not all schools in the two regions are here, because like government indicated, not all schools will be implementing the double-track system. Now, when I entered a while ago, they were gathered in groups, and they had some technical people going around to assist them draft the timetable. They are considering, first of all, the population of the school, and then the class sizes, taking into consideration the school's resources. Now, it is after this engagement that a report will be sent to the Education Ministry, first of all to the GES, for government to know what the deficit is, and then to make the necessary allocations to the schools in terms of teachers that will be needed, plus other resources that will be needed to implement smoothly the double-track system. From the Best Western Plus Hotel at Nungwa, my name is Esmenu for Joy News.
And we're taking a break here on Joy News Prime. Still ahead in the bulletin, Bank of Ghana shows it is actively working to avert a recurrence of the banking crisis, thus seeing the collapse of 7 banks so far.
Have been identified, and there's the need. They are found culpable by the law. I think it is important and they are found culpable by the law, the appropriate sanctions will be applied.
The consultant, Dr. Daniel Seto, meanwhile explains Ghanaian taxpayers will have to pay for the cost of government's intervention in the sector. Break it up. Back in a bit. The Bank of Ghana has assured measures have been put in place to avert a recurrence of the recent banking crisis that resulted in the collapse of 5 banks. The 5, Beige Bank, Unibank, Construction Bank, Royal Bank and Sovereign Bank, had their licenses withdrawn and the assets taken over by the newly established Consolidated Bank Ghana. Government is, however, having to take up the cost of the intervention, amounting to billions of cedis, a cost which eventually will be borne by the Ghanaian taxpayer. Speaking on Joy FM Super Morning Show, Head of Banking Supervision, or JC, said the central bank intends to be more proactive going forward.
If it comes out that somebody compromised, the appropriate sanctions will be applied. Because I have told you over and over that there's a report, we have done the report, and the period in which these things occurred are clearly defined. Are you getting it? And it was these things occurred under the administration of some people, and once the people have been identified and there's the need, they are found culpable by the law. I think it is important that, and they are found culpable by the law, the appropriate sanctions will be applied.
That's fine. So who gave these banks that have licensing issues, who gave them the last set, or should I say the initial licenses, and what due diligence was done? Who are the officials?
I think once we can define the period in which the licenses were given, I think we can clearly identify the people who gave these licenses. And I'm happy you have come out to ask the provisional and the final. You see, somebody puts in an application for a banking license, and you would have to do your due diligence up to a point in time. And once you are satisfied that a set of documentation submitted to the bank have been verified and they've been found to be authentic and accurate, then what you do is that you give the person a provisional license. Then provisional means there are some other compliance issues that would have to be met. Then once the person goes ahead to meet the other outstanding requirements, then you give the person the final license. But you see, at that point in time, when you gave the provisional license, you would have verified the capital, you would have done some other verifications, and you gave the provisional license. Which
department specifically?
Yeah. It is done by the Banking Supervision Department.
So your department?
Yeah, my department. Then the time comes and you issue the person with the final license. Then, because you want to be sure that the capital that the person brought in stayed in the business, right, and it did not go out of the business, 6 months after that, or a period after that, you go back to do another examination. You go on site to do another examination, and the examination will involve the verification of the capital that the person brought. So at this point in time, when issues come up, when you're doing the on-site verification after you've issued the final license, then you begin to ask questions. Where is the capital that was brought in? Then, if you find that the capital that was brought in did not stay in the business, then the necessary action would have to be taken.
Now, Mr. Jesse took over from Raymond Amanfo as head of banking supervision and was responsible for the licensing of the now defunct banks. But when confronted over the collapse of Capital Bank and UT Bank last year, he referred to challenges in the regulatory environment. Chartered accountant and consultant Dr. Seto, Daniel Seto, however, explains Ghanaians would have to change their ways if laws are to be effectively enforced. He adds that the Ghanaian taxpayer will, in the meantime, have to pay for the bailout of the collapsed banks.
You need to have a certain framework to run a bank. We don't. Our mindset is that this is my bank, forgetting that it's depositors' money that is bigger than your capital. And so you must work in the interest of the depositors. We think it's my bank, I can do anything. That's our mindset. And once you have that mindset, the control doesn't mean anything to you. That is why I'll go back to my bottom, the top. The people at the top, once there's a problem here, it goes down. Because that young person is looking up to you. If you do the wrong thing, he would also do it. It runs through. And indeed, the issues we are discussing, there's not much about the people down here. These are decisions made in and outside the boardroom. That's where it is. So, indigenous banks, yes. How do we do things as a people? Let's pay attention. If you study us critically, where we put our collective effort, we never manage the resources there properly. It's a major problem we have as a people, and the earlier we start discussing, the better. Where we put our collective resources, we never manage that properly. Whether it's in the church room, whether it's about tax, whether about governance, whether about bank, whether about SNIT, the story is always the same.
And why is it so?
That is who we are. And that's our level of development. We need to work on that. I'm sorry to use those words to illustrate, but we need to grow out of this thing. The people in the advanced world, they've gone through these things. We need to learn from them, quicken up the pace, and start doing things. We must learn to do productive things. We are not productive people. We only squander resources and go looking for other people's resources, and that also will squander.
Can we have people punished for this?
I'll share with you an interesting one shared with me, unfortunately, by Captain Amwabin. When I was doing my research, I spent a whole day trying to interview him. And one of the things he said is that in this country, when people are coming for loan, they want to come with their ankles. And I said, why do they want to come with their ankles? He said, because they don't intend to pay. And once it gets to the point of repayment that they are not paying, the ankles will show up and say, oh, you too, exercise patience. That is who we are. So he told me that for his UT, financial services at that time, he says, don't bring anybody, come on your own. If you don't pay, we'll deal with you. We need to develop that skill of learning to punish people.
Despite all that, with the UT, since you brought it in, his bank still went down.
We could use that for a case study, and we could talk about it and talk about what happened and UT went under. Things happen. So again, it's about the discipline we have to do things and do things right. But we need strong people, strong leaders, leaders who are willing to punish.
Unless we get that, we're not going to see anything happen.
If you don't get that, you won't get a result.
Especially because the Bank of Ghana is also saying that we're not responsible for punishing the people.
It's a weakness in us.
They say that, well, we've done our job, we're willing to cooperate with the appropriate agencies, but
yes,
it is not within our remit.
If that's what the law is currently, it tells us that it's a weakness in our system. And our system has been designed not to punish anybody and punish immediately. So we need to correct that also. If we can establish clearly that there's wrongdoing, we need to act and act swiftly. Other than that, the longer it takes, the more we get people to think that if you do the wrong thing, you go scot-free.
Right, some breaking news just coming through to us is that the energy minister has been sacked by President Akufo-Addo, and we have a statement coming through. I'm going to share that statement with you. So it indicates that the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has by a letter dated 6 August 2018 relieved the Minister of Energy, Mr. Boakye Agyarko, of his position with immediate effect. President Akufo-Addo has asked Mr. Boakye Agyarko to hand over his office to the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. John Peter Amewu, who act temporarily as Minister for Energy until a substantive appointment is made. The President wishes Mr. Boakye Agyarko well in his future, and there was another statement, doesn't quite say why the Minister has been relieved of his duties. But we do understand that it has to do, or in recent times, we're having to deal with the issue of the Ameri energy deal, the revised Ameri energy deal, which has been tabled before Parliament. Now we're learning that that Ameri deal is being withdrawn, but it is in the wake of this deal, or the revised deal, and the controversies that have come up about it, that this decision, we believe, is being taken. We are aware, as I indicated earlier on the bulletin, that the energy minister had been summoned or asked to come to the Flagstaff House, the presidency, and he was there earlier. And we understand that this is the outcome of that engagement that took place. So just to recap the information that we have right now, the breaking news reaching us right now is that the President of the Republic, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, has by letter dated 6 August relieved the Minister of Energy, Mr. Boakye Jarko, of his position with immediate effect. President Akufo-Addo has asked Mr. Boakye Jarko to hand over his office to the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Mr. John Peter Amil, who act temporarily as Minister of Energy until a substantive appointment is made. The President wishes Mr. Boakye Jarko well in his future endeavors. And this statement is signed by Eugene Anying, who is the Director of Communications. We're taking a break now on Joy News Prime. We're bringing you business news thereafter. Do stay tuned.
Hello, good evening to you. Welcome to Business. The Ghana Free Zones Authority has identified about 80 companies licensed to operate as free zone companies but are inactive and unfit to carry out business as stipulated under the Free Zones Act. To this end, the board of the authority has approved various sanctions for such companies before the end of this year. The Executive Secretary of the authority, Michael Befi, says these companies have flouted regulations for the concept and will need to apply for a new license after the sanctions are imposed. He spoke in an interview after a short media interaction ahead of this year's Investment Week celebrations. Ebenezer Sabuti has more.
The Ghana Free Zones Authority has about 205 companies registered under the Free Zones Act since it was established in 1995. Out of this number, the authority has identified about 80 companies who were licensed to operate as free zone companies but inactive and unfit to carry out business activities as beneficiaries of the free zones. Among many other things, the 80 companies failed to comply with the mandatory 70% export rule and also declare their quarterly finances. According to the Executive Secretary, Michael Befi, sanctions will be applied to these companies.
You cannot just decide not to do export and still be a free zones company. You will not be able to submit anything to us. And so when we came, some companies are just on paper like that. They have never done even one export before. Since the incorporation of the business, since the licensing of that business into free zone, there are some companies that are not doing so well. And so the board, our board, has given us the permission.
Adding that the affected companies will be made to reapply as new entities.
That we would delist, you have to go to the process again, because if we delist, it means that we have to come in again as a free zones enterprise by submitting your documents for us to go through and see. Because what they were not doing right, was doing strict application processes by checking to see whether these people who claim to be having a certain amount of money as base capital have it. Whether they claim they have an off-taker in the foreign land, they have it. Whether they have the market. All these things will be said, but you have to find out, and that's what we are doing. So we are trying to check a lot of things to be sure whether these things they tell us are true on paper. Do you understand? So we even send people there to do background check about their strength and their capacity to do business.
Meanwhile, about 18 companies have been licensed to operate as free zone industries since the beginning of the year. The authority says it is looking forward to fix a minimum capital requirement for potential companies who will apply for the program.
we are trying to, one of the key things that we're looking at, because free zones is the only thing that doesn't have a cap. So if you are coming in, you can even come to free zones but with $50,000 and you can still do business. We think that's not right. We are looking at, want to target a certain class of people now. So in the amendment process, one of the key things we are looking at is the capping thing that we want companies to come with a specific amount of money. So you cannot just say that I have $100,000, I'm coming to invest. Because they do that and they have more money. You heard what the Ghana Nut guy was saying. He started Ghana Nut with less than $100,000. Now he's worth $40 million. How much has Free Zone gotten from that amount?
The Investment Week is an initiative by the authority to woo investors into the program.
Now, every part of a crop is useful and nothing should be wasted, not even the residue. This is why Agrosol, one of the 8 finalists of the Cosmos Innovation Center Agrotech Challenge, is bent on taking advantage of this agribusiness opportunity, which may not be very attractive to many young people. With one last opportunity to impress judges with the innovative business concept, Team Agrosol has been sharing what they've got to offer.
July, August, September, right? Yeah.
Like the other 7 groups participating in the finals of the Cosmos Innovation Center Agrotech Challenge, the next 2 months will be the most challenging for Team Agrosol. They're expected to showcase a minimum viable product. They are required to test this innovation on potential customers. The team of 4 wants to make it easier for clients to access crop residue, such as coconut husks, which are needed as raw materials for certain products.
Cost.
Richmond and Ernest are meeting here at the offices of Cosmos Energy in Accra to complete their tasks, as other 2 members are engaged elsewhere.
We've realized that there are several uses of agricultural waste or post-harvest waste. However, although they're in abundance, they are either burnt or neglected in the bush to rot away. So we've also identified that there are some companies or some individuals who either use these post-harvest waste as raw materials for production or who export them. But then these waste or these residues are scattered all across the country. So we've come up with a plan or with an idea to make these waste or these residues accessible to those who need them for production and for export. This wasn't our first idea to pitch. The other ones that we initially pitched were not solid enough, were not scalable. So when we pitched this idea and we got a thumbs up, we began to think around it to find out how we can make this scalable, profitable, and a good business.
Richmond, Ernest, Justice and Joseph joined the Agrotech Challenge as individuals 9 months ago. But one key requirement of the challenge is for participants to form groups. Members of the group will then work together as partners to develop their innovative business concepts. As they took part in various activities, the members of Agrosol quickly bonded.
I met Richmond on the first day, so I remember talking to him, and I remember him asking whether I felt I could win KIC. And I said, I believe so. I don't know if he remembers that question.
I do very well.
Now, for the other 2 team members, I've never had an interaction with Justice up until the final day of team building. So Richmond had contact with Joseph Bryden, and Joseph happened to have had some preliminary discussions with Justice. So the 4 of us just decided to form a team. So instead of
this one will be
week 1.
It wasn't a smooth sail though. There were some differences, but nothing a team building training could not fix.
2 of us in the team are a bit, for lack of better words, say opinionated, where we want our opinions to be given priority. And so if you have such people, I mean, if you have multiples of such people in a team, if you're not lucky, there will be some sort of conflict once in a while.
Irrespective of our differences in opinions in how the work should be done, we end up sometimes compromising, sometimes insisting on our opinions, sometimes, well, shouting at each other, depending on what the circumstances may demand. But at the end of the day, it's the work that is the focus. The work should go on.
We've learned to give in to some ideas, but then most importantly, we've learned to think through ideas.
With a background in agriculture science and ICT, members of Agrosol are confident they can run this Agrotech enterprise they want to establish.
Agrosol is towering above all these competitors.
The two previous competitive pitches were tough, but Agrosol persevered. Now that they are close to the grand prize, they're not leaving anything to chance.
For the first 4 weeks, we are going to collect the data. When that is done, then we will test the operations itself from weeks 5 up to week 9.
These young entrepreneurs have big dreams, dreams they are determined to fulfill, because to them, this is not just a competition. Agrosol is a passion.
We will. We are winning this.
Business news. In spite of efforts by the Bank of Ghana to prune down the number of banks in the country, SIC Insurance has indicated it is looking at establishing another bank very soon as a strategy to promote growth.
We'll be bringing you an update on the breaking news story that's just come through in the last few minutes, which has to do with the presidency relieving the energy minister of his post. In the meantime, though, the Food and Drugs Authority is collaborating with the Ghana Private Road Transport Union, GPRT, to clamp down on activities of drug sellers in commercial vehicles. This forms part of efforts to flush out unapproved drugs from the market. Joshua Kobna-Smith has been following the trend and has filed this report.
John Addo sells medicines here at the 37th station in Accra. Unlike many of his counterparts who deal in mainly herbal preparations, John sells orthodox medicines. Today, a duema and an ointment.
I have been in this business for the last 3 years.
The sale of drugs in commercial vehicles in Ghana contravenes the Public Health Act 2012, which says sale of unapproved drugs in unapproved places is a violation of Section 118 of Act 851. John has been plying his trade on buses and bus terminals.
I moved from Medina, La Paz, 37, and also Ashaiman to sell my drugs.
John believes the law must exempt what he does because he does not sell unapproved or expired drugs.
We take into consideration the expiry dates of the drugs before we purchase them. Our drugs are purchased from certified pharmacies and shops in the country before they are sold. My colleagues and I always do away with the expired ones. We are yet to meet one.
But Nana Owusu, a passenger, says it's all a nuisance.
If you are learned and somebody brought something you don't know, you make sure those people, they will come to the car, they will convince you for you to buy the product.
Well, that'll be it for the bulletin. My name is Israelai. Thank you very much for watching. You have a good night. Up next, we bring you a Hotline documentary.
This is Joy News Prime.